Okay, welcome to another Orbiter 2010 video. This scenario is the mirror, or excuse me, it's the ISS to mirror checklist scenario. It's mission number 2. Somebody posted a message on my YouTube channel saying that they were having a problem getting from the ISS to mirror, so I thought it'd make for a good fly with me video. I'm just going to jump in and give this a shot, do what I think needs to be done in order to make this journey. The only thing I'm going to say is that I'm not going to put any effort into being efficient at this. I do know that the better way to do this, to transfer orbit from ISS to mirror, there's a much better way than just doing brute force plane change, but I'm going to do the brute force plane change. Okay, now, having said that, I'm just going to jump right into it. I'm going to select the line plane, target mirror, and I'm going to go through this beginning part fairly quickly because I don't think too many people would have any problem with this part of it. So we're just going to Control D to undock. A little bit of translation to back away, and press K to close the cone. Then I'm just going to warp time ahead over here to the descending node. And the way this is going to work, when I get to about 350 seconds away from the descending node, the align plane the align plane MFD is going to tell me to fire the thrusters. So we're going to fire the thrusters and do half the burn as we're coming up to the descending node. Then we're going to do the other half of the burn as we're going away from the descending node. And since this is such a large plane change, it's not likely that I'll be able to complete the entire thing in one burn. So I'll probably have to go around to the ascending node to finish it off. So let's go ahead and do this. Warp time ahead till the time to node is about 350 seconds. And the reason we go for 350 seconds is because that is approximately 1/2 of the amount of estimated thrust. Okay, coming up to it here shortly, so we'll get into the orbit normal position. And as I'm doing this burn, I'm going to bring up an external MFD and bring up map, just so we can see what's happening as we do this burn. So this is our current orbit, the green line, and what we need is to have our orbit plane appear like the yellow line to match mirror. So as I do this burn, you'll see this green line change so that it looks more like the yellow line. Coming up here on the burn any second. And I'm going to go ahead and warp time ahead just to get through this burn more quickly. And as this position indicator gets closer to center, we'll go ahead and stop the burn, even though technically it says to kill thrust, but okay, once we get down out to that halfway point, we're not going to get any more of a burn or any more benefit out of continuing to burn. It'll actually just start to make things worse. So now I'm going to go around to the ascending node and finish this off. And as we approach the ascending node, we're going to go orbit minus. That's anti-normal. As I always say, AN equals AN. Anti-normal equals ascending node, or ascending node equals anti-normal. And when this gets to about 10 seconds, actually more like 9, which is half the thrust, then we'll fire the main engines and finish this off. About now. overshot just a tad, so I'm using a little bit of reverse translation to finish that up, or straighten things out. So you can see in the map MFD our orbit line is now basically exactly the same, or rather it is exactly the same as mirror. So I'm going to go ahead and close out that MFD. And we're done with align plane for now. If needed, we'll bring it back up later. Now what I want to do is take a look at orbit MFD, change the projection to ship, it already is, hit no target. Now I'm going to target mirror, and I'm going to change the distance so that it's PEA, APA, and frame, doesn't really matter. Now one problem you may run into when doing this transfer from ISS to mirror is once you do that large plane change burn, it raises your orbit quite a bit, and it also, if you do it the way I did, you're going to be behind mirror, so that means you need to catch up to mirror. But one of the problems with catching up to mirror is that your orbit time is much longer. See, our orbit period is 5,738 seconds, and mirror's orbit period is 5,426 seconds. So that's an extra, what is that, about an extra 300 seconds, I guess, that it takes us to orbit than it does mirror. So that means every time we go around, we're actually getting farther and farther behind mirror. So there's a couple of ways to solve this problem, but I'm going to do it sort of the sloppy way or whatever. It doesn't use any fuel, so it's efficient to do it this way, but it's not necessarily really elegant. But before I get to that, I'm going to say that I'm going to rendezvous with mirror over here on this side at its periapsis. So what I want to do is fast forward until I'm at mirror's apoapsis, which is this point, and then I'm going to do a retrograde burn to bring my orbit down on this side so that my periapsis matches mirror's periapsis. Okay, so let me go ahead and fast forward here to mirror's apoapsis, just like that's that yellow circle right there. Go ahead and get into the retrograde position, since this is going to be a retrograde burn. And it's coming up here in just a few seconds. So let me press mod now. So let me just take warp down to 0.1 for just a second. So mirror's periapsis is 294.5. I need to make my periapsis 294.5. Okay, and I'm going to start that burn as soon as this green line crosses this yellow circle right here. About right, getting at that point. So main engine burn. A little too much.
Rotation, translation.
So let me just do a little bit of translation to back it up. We're going for 294.5. And there we have it. So now, this side of my orbit is the same altitude as mirror. So what I want to do now is catch up to mirror. But the way I'm going to have to do this is I'm going to actually let mirror catch up to me. And the way I'm going to do it is mirror is going to have to go around a whole bunch of orbits in order to catch up to me, since I'm behind it. So I'll just kind of fast forward here a little bit and you'll see what's going on. I'm just going to press T a couple times. And you can see with each orbit, mirror's getting further ahead of me. And if I just let it go, eventually mirror will get so far ahead of me that it'll actually cross the halfway point and it'll start catching up to me. So you can see here, it's getting further ahead. I can speed this up a little bit, but I don't want to speed it up too much because then you can't really see what's going on. So now Mir's about halfway around. Now it's technically catching up to me. So let's go forward a few more orbits. And maybe one more time. Something like that. So now, this is me, and that's Mir, and Mir's technically catching up to me at this point. So now I can use sync orbit MFD, open up an external, because I'd like to keep orbit open as well. So let's open sync orbit, target Mir, and we're going to use Mir's periapsis because that's what we picked. So I want target periapsis as the reference. So I'll hit mod, that's ship's periapsis, that's there. Ship's apoapsis, that's over here. And target periapsis, that's the one that I want. So I need to bring DT min down to 0. And the way I do that is I come over here to the target periapsis and I'll do a burn in order to reduce DT min down to 0. I'm not actually sure if I need to do prograde or retrograde, so what I'll do is get into position and then I'll just do a small burst of translation just to figure out which direction I need to go. So before I get there, let me open retro doors just in case I need to do a retro burn. I'll show you what I mean when I get up there. So now I'm going to fast forward slowly because I don't want to overshoot over here to this point. Getting pretty close. I'm going to go to the retrograde position. And as I'm getting really close to the target periapsis, now I'm going to do a small forward translation burn. And I can see as I'm doing a forward burn, that's bringing DT min down. So I could use a little bit of main engine. And I can see DT min's coming down. Okay, now just a little bit of translation to finish it off. And there we have it, DT min 0.00. And that's coming up on, let's see, not the next orbit, but the one after. So I can go ahead and shut off the prograde autopilot. And now I can begin preparing for rendezvous with Mir. I can press Control I and bring up Vessel and Mir because I need to know what the transponder frequency is for Mir. It's 132.10. So now I'll hit select com nav and I'll make my nav 1 132.10. And I don't actually plan on docking because I believe that anybody that can actually rendezvous with either the ISS or Mir or whatever, the actual docking procedure is easy. It's generally catching up and getting into catching up and then keeping your relative velocity at 0. That's typically the problems that people have. And then docking, it's kind of like landing. It's not really hard to do. It just takes a long time. Okay, so, but I will go ahead and set the frequency nav2 for the first docking collar. And that's 135. Okay, so there we have that. And I will bring up the docking MFD. And I'll go ahead and change the HUD over to dock, but we've got a ways to go. I've got to press T here to orbit around, or rather, yeah, orbit. Okay, so we're passing our rendezvous point. Now we're going to go around one more time. And now our dock MFD is telling us that we're 580 kilometers away. And we're still 1,700 seconds away from the actual rendezvous. So let's warp time ahead and get a little closer. Now, just in the interest of time, I'm kind of speeding forward toward Mir a little faster than I normally would. I would prefer to take a little more time with this, but just in the interest of keeping the video time down, I'm going to speed ahead a little faster than I normally would. So we're 140 kilometers away. "90 kilometers away," 80. Okay, now we're 36 kilometers away. We're pretty close, so we need to
Rotation.
kind of see what's going on. I don't need this MFD anymore, so let me close that out. And we can probably have time to take a look at Mir if we can actually see it. I don't know if we can see it at 30 kilometers out. Yeah, we can't really see it. It's inside this box. So what I need to do is rotate around. Until I have the bullseye. Right there. And I'm going to go ahead and warp time ahead, get a little closer yet. Now, because of my speed, I feel comfortable getting in this close. I know the main engines are powerful enough to reduce all this velocity, or I should say eliminate all this velocity, even though I'm this close. And I'm going to go ahead and just get in even closer yet. Probably get all the way down to about 2 kilometers, because the main engines are plenty powerful enough to eliminate all this relative velocity. And if I'm too far away, then it just takes a long time to close the distance. We're actually getting farther away from Mir at this point, so go ahead and oops. Hate when I hit the wrong buttons. Using main engines to zero out that velocity difference. Okay. So we're about 8 kilometers away. It's not too bad. Let me go ahead and rotate around so we can see Mir.
Translation.
Now what I want to do is get that velocity vector on the, on Mir itself. And add just just a little bit of forward momentum. Add a little more, or else it'll take forever to get over there. Say 10 meters a second. It's going to have to be good enough. And we'll just keep that velocity vector. That's the, that bullseye looking thing. Let's keep it right on mirror, and then we'll use a little bit of time warp to close the distance between us and mirror. And every few 100 meters, I'll back off time warp and move the velocity vector back over. Because the velocity vector, of course, is the direction we're actually heading toward. And we want to be heading toward mirror at all times. Even though I'm at 10x, I can probably get away with, just a little bit of translation so I don't have to come out of time warp. Just closing the distance down, want to get, down to a kilometer or so, and then we'll consider it a successful rendezvous. And if needed, we can use a little bit of forward translation to give ourselves a little bit more velocity. Just don't want to go too much now because we're getting quite close. So we're down to 2 kilometers. And if I needed, I could also obviously select the docking HUD now. And that's done by pressing nav and then HUD. And I can see the docking corridor over there. So let's go ahead and just get a little closer. Okay, we're down to 700 meters, so we'll come out of time warp. And we'll just rotate it down here a little bit so we can see better. Rotate over. And that's basically a rendezvous. We're moving at a mere 5 meters a second, 5 meters per second, coming up on mirror. And there's the docking corridor, so to dock at this point, obviously we just need to rotate properly, get inside the corridor, and close the distance. And the only reason I'm not going to do that in this video is simply because it would just take an extra 15-20 minutes to do that part. So hopefully that helps out. Maybe addresses some of the problems that you might run into when trying to make this trip from the ISS to mirror. And again, I do want to emphasize the point, this is not an efficient way to do it. But, for your first try,
Translation.
you reduce some of my forward momentum. There we go. But for your first attempt to actually switch from one space station to another, I don't think there's anything wrong with learning this brute force method, which just consumes an enormous amount of fuel. If you look at our main tank, we used, 60% of our fuel just to go from one space station to the other. That's about as much fuel as would be used just to launch and to get into orbit. So obviously this is a horrible method, but you got to start somewhere. So that's the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. If you'd like to, leave a comment down below.